Paying my respects to the Honorable Chief Ministers of Kerala, of Delhi, of Punjab, to the many ministers, parliamentarians, legislative members of Kerala, of other states, of our colleagues from Tamilnadu, members of parliament, and all of the people gathered here. On behalf of our Chief Minister, through MK Stalin, I'm happy to be a part of this vital expression of protest against the unfair, unjust, immoral, and ultimately self-destructive deprivation of funds from opposition states at historically unprecedented levels through hitherto unimaginable means. In his DO letter to the Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala, our Chief Minister pointed out 3 or 4 extreme examples. The first is the use of Article 293, subsection B of the Constitution, for the Finance Ministry of the Union Government of India to override the legislative powers of the states who have their own equivalents to the FRBM Acts and are empowered under the Constitution to set their own borrowing limits. However, unelected members of the Finance Ministry of the Union Government override the legislative powers of the state and set borrowing limits using the back door of 293B. Going further, they use unfairly low estimates of the GSDP of our state and therefore set a limit as 3% or 3.5% of a much lower GSDP than those actually realized. Further, they force us to take any debts incurred in the public sector undertakings like the electricity board onto our state financing limit. And finally, he pointed out that schemes like the Chennai Metro, where the Government of India should have infused its share of equity and therefore removed those borrowings from our borrowing limit, they have refused to do so for many years and forced those borrowings onto our balance sheet and therefore affect our overall borrowing capacity. The Chief Minister has already pointed out the many ways in which we are deprived of our share of funding, primarily starting with the excessive use of surcharges and cesses, where the Government of India does not share those revenues with the states and instead, at its own discretion, in its own schemes, decides how those should be distributed. At one time, Tamil Nadu used to get about 70% of its revenues from the union as share of taxes and 30% under central schemes. Right now, we get less than half our revenues from share of taxes and the other half from central schemes. And those schemes are grossly biased against states like Tamil Nadu. Whenever we ask for any support, there is always a response of silence. When we ask for our airports to be declared international airports, they don't do it, and they open airports in BJP states. When we ask for AIMS or NIPER to be funded as announced in the union budget, they don't do it and leave them as mere announcements. When we ask for relief from historic floods, they don't allocate 1 rupee and show no compassion at all. In fact, if you look at the way they fund the schemes, as the Honorable Chief Minister pointed out, when they start at 80-20 union to state. In 2 years, it's 20-80, 20% their money, 80% our money. Yet, we are told, we have to brand them as union schemes, we have to use the Prime Minister's name, we have to use the Prime Minister's image, otherwise we will not even get that 20% of the funding. With the way that we are going towards direct benefit transfers, it will not be too long before most people will not see the image of Mahatma Gandhi on the rupee notes and instead will only be required to see the image of the Prime Minister on the identity of the scheme. These kinds of biases have been aggravated and exacerbated by the nature of GST. Many say that it is an example of federalism. I'll say the good news. The Union Finance Minister, whenever she chairs these meetings, is unfailingly courteous and allows everybody to speak. But that's about as far as federalism goes. The Union government gets to decide the agenda, it gets to decide the composition of group of ministers, it gets to nominate the chairman, it gets to have every control over the mechanism, and by design has 30% voting rights in a place where you need to have 75% voting to pass any resolution. It can deny any resolution it likes, and for the states to pass any resolution against this union's interest, you will have to get at least 15 or so states lined up to go against the union. This is not federalism. If we say, so you cut our actual allocations, you cut our funds, let us at least go and borrow them from the market. They reduce our borrowing capacity in every way possible. They cut our GDP from their own CSO's estimate to some artificial level, force us to take some percentage on that, 3.25%, 3.5%, while they, in a shameless sign of hypocrisy, consider it a brilliant outcome if their fiscal deficit is 5 or 5.5 or 6%, but hold us to limits like 3 or 3.25 or 3.5. So they will not give us money and they will not let us borrow. What are the other channels available for us? We want to get foreign direct investment. What do? They deny us permission to go overseas to seek investment. The Foreign Affairs Ministry routinely rejects applications from state ministers to travel overseas. They retard or delay inbound missions who come to meet us. They divert investments to their preferred states and to GIFT City. They restrict the World Bank or ADB from funding more than one project in one state in a year. And they delay or stall FIPB approval and cabinet approval. In every way possible, they want to constrain our fiscal flexibility and our ability to service our people's needs. And yet, we have to continue this fight. In fact, from my party, I say that I learned the fight for states' rights and federalism from Peraringer Anna, who founded the party, from Talaivar Kalaignar, who ran it for more than 50 years, and from my Chief Minister, through DMK Stalin. But one of the things we learned from Peraringer Anna is that we must take credit and join with all those whose principles match ours, and we must give them credit as well. In that sense, I pay respects to our local opposition, Ms. Jayalalitha, who also stood strong for federalism and states' rights. And I must mention here that I pay my respects to the one-time champion of federalism, the three-time Chief Minister of Gujarat, Thiru Narendra Modi, who was once the greatest champion of federalism when he was the Chief Minister. People change, seats change, nothing is permanent. We are in a situation where many of us were once not elected, now are elected, someday will not be elected again. But some truths can never be changed. The first truth that can never be changed is no matter how much money you take away from some, or no matter how much money you give to others, you simply cannot create growth unless you do three profound things. You cannot do it without inclusive education for all and ensuring that your workforce can compete in a global market. These things are not happening in the BJP states. You cannot do it without having a vibrant democracy that creates a level playing field with strong institutions and draws investment and encourages people to invest. And you cannot do it without having communal harmony and makes it easy for business owners, small enterprises, MSC, to feel like it is a stable place ruled by law, and therefore they can take risk to create enterprises. Without that, your oligarchs cannot create sustainable growth for you. So where does that leave us? We keep the good fight. And we must remember that there are three magic values that make us invincible and protect us against all the onslaughts against federalism the pro-authoritarians can bring on us. The first value is our culture of inclusion, of harmony, of self-respect, of social justice, of equal access, and of education as the basis for progress of society. We must protect our culture. Second, we must remember that compassion is the best quality of the governor, not strength, not power. For those who are continuously in a fight, they can keep projecting strength and power. For those of us who have come to serve the people, it is compassion that defines us. It is our ability to protect the weakest and to provide for those most in need. And finally, it is competence that is our value. We must strive to do better every day, even as our resources get cut. We must bring in better advice. We must improve our own execution. The more learned and educated we are, the more we realize we need support from others and the input of brilliant minds. No one is all-knowing. No regime lasts forever. Our job is to stick to our values and hope that someday people start thinking, like me, I am a believer. I believe in God. But I don't believe any man is God. I don't believe any man is all-knowing. I believe that sooner or later all of us will have to vacate our seats. Our job is to hold our values, our culture, our compassion, our competence at the best level and wait for things to change. And that is the way we protect our language, our way of life, our history. Men will come and men will go. Our values and our cultures and our societies will go on strong because we have the right values. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I wish this protest all success.
உடனுக்குடன் செய்திகளை தெரிந்து கொள்ள சன் நியூஸ் பெல் ஐகானை கிளிக் பண்ணுங்க.